Welcome to the first episode of Dinosaur News of the Week for the 19th to the 26th of August. Coming up, a new sailback ornithopod is described from the Isle of Wight, a new dinosaur horror movie has been released in cinemas, and a study shows that some raptors were actually birds. First up, let's start with some news that technically happened over a week ago. DinoCon UK 2025 happened in Exeter from the 16th to the 17th of August, being the first convention dedicated purely to dinosaurs, as well as the, quote, anagenetic descendant of Ted Zukon, as Darren, the organiser, put it in the opening ceremony. Almost 1,000 people attended and over £3,265 was raised for the World Parrot Trust at the charity auction. Honestly, there's so much to talk about with DinoCon UK that it deserves its own video, which I can definitely work on since I was able to attend it. I even made some financially questionable decisions while I was there. Next up, the question that's been on no one's mind is, where's the Iguanodon video, PalaeoMob? It's been over 6 months since it was supposed to come out. The official response? I'll get round to it. And now, for the first of the biggest stories this week. A new ornithopod dinosaur was described on the 22nd of August. It's a Styracosternon from the early Cretaceous Wessex Formation of the Isle of Wight called Istiorachis macarthrae. Istiorachis meaning sail spine, and macarthrae honouring the sailor, Dame Ellen MacArthur. Its fossils were found near Grange, Chine almost 40 years ago by the well-known fossil hunter Nick Chase, and they consist mostly of dorsal vertebrae with an incomplete pelvis and a single neck vertebra. Istiorachis has particularly long neural spines running down its back. Interestingly, these spines are shorter towards its shoulders and taller towards its hips, whereas most orthopods with long neural spines have taller spines at the shoulders. The phylogenetic analysis in the paper also concluded that it was the sister taxon to the Nigerian ornithopod Bahariasaurus, which is the ornithopod with the longest sail on its back, which is also tallest at the shoulders. There are many hypotheses about what these long spines were used for in other sail-backed ornithopods like Bahariasaurus, including combining with the ossified tendons to distribute forces, acting as fat storage like the humps of camels, and regulating body temperature. However, these long spines are in areas of the body that provide no biomechanical advantages and also evolved independently in different groups of ornithopods, meaning that it's unlikely that they had any physiological benefits. Camels don't have elongated spines in their humps, and these long-spined ornithopods live during periods of fairly stable global temperatures, so it's unlikely to be used for temperature regulation. The final conclusion, since they appear to have no other function, is that they are used for display, since that's what most otherwise useless anatomical features tend to evolve for, whether that's for attracting mates, intimidating rivals, intraspecific recognition, interspecific recognition, or intimidating predators. The discovery of Istiorachis also adds to the ornithopod diversity of the Wessex Formation of the Isle of Wight. Now for the lightning round of news. I'll make this snappy, sorry about the pun, as on the 20th of August, a new paper was published in the Journal of South American Earth Sciences describing Abelisauroid teeth that's been found in the Cretaceous Açu Formation, including the first Noasaurid fossils from the Potiguar Basin of northeastern Brazil. The paper also goes into detail about how the fossils found in this formation share many similarities with the fauna of the Bahariasaurus Formation of Egypt and the Carr Formation of Niger, although some differences were noted, such as the lack of megaraptoran fossils from these North African formations. Bahariasaurus. Also on the topic of teeth, a paper was published today as of writing this, the 26th of August, in the paleontology journal Al-Karinge, which describes some Spinosaurid teeth from the early Cretaceous Sao Kua Formation of Thailand, and came to the conclusion that these teeth represented a taxon distinct from Siamosaurus. The paper also supported the validity of Siamosaurus. And to round off the actual scientific papers of the lightning round, Thomas Carr published a full redescription of the skull of the Tyrannosaurus rex holotype CM9380, which is also the first thorough study on the skull since it was initially described back in 1905, which reveals some new information about Tyrannosaurus' growth. In dinosaur media news, on the 19th of August, Jurassic World Evolution officially revealed that Patagotitan would be in Jurassic World Evolution 3, although some previous teasers had already included it in the background. And on the 25th of August, Prehistoric Kingdom Update 15 released, adding 2 new dinosaurs, Oviraptor and Gallimimus. On the 21st of August, a new dinosaur movie called Primitive War was released in theatres in the US and Australia. Based on the novel of the same name, the movie follows some American soldiers in Vietnam that find themselves getting hunted by dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals in the jungle. It received a 7 on IMDb, but since it's not out in the UK yet, I can't give my actual opinion on it, so that's why it's in the lightning round. Also on the 21st of August, a 1.21 meter long Zhuchengtyrannus femur was announced on Facebook, being the longest Tyrannosaurus femur to be discovered in Asia. A 28 cm wide vertebra from a separate Zhuchengtyrannus individual was also announced in the same post. These two fossils both indicate that Zhuchengtyrannus may have been bigger than previously believed, putting in the same size as Tyrannosaurus, or possibly larger. However, the specimens are currently unpublished, so these estimates may change in the future. And now for the rambling. How is presenting this story in this format even considered news segment? Another paper has been released with the Unenlagiids aren't dromaeosaurids hypothesis, with this paper claiming that they're also birds now. For some important background information, in 1997, Fernando Novas and Pablo Puerta described the bird-like Unenlagia, and they classified it as more closely related to the Aviale, the bird clade, than to any other Paravians. In 1999, Unenlagia and its closest relatives were given their own distinct family called the Unenlagiids. However, many other paleontologists have usually classified the Unenlagiids as a group of strange, largely southern hemisphere exclusive dromaeosaurids renamed to the Unenlagiids, and this is still largely the overall consensus. For reference, here are some hypotheses that classify the Unenlagiids as dromaeosaurids. In 2013, building on from a study that they conducted in 2011, Novas and Federico Agnolin published a paper that not only stated that the Unenlagiids were not dromaeosaurids, but that the Microraptorians were no longer classified as dromaeosaurids either. However, they didn't classify these groups as birds. Instead, these two groups formed a clade that also included the Anchiornithids and the avians, called the Aberraptora, a stem-based clade defined as all Paravians closer to Pasa domesticus than to Dromaeosaurus albertensis. This also meant that Dromaeosauridae only included the eudromaeosaurs such as Velociraptor. This new paper was led by Matthias Motta and co-authored along with the authors of the 2013 paper, and it includes multiple other Gondwanan Paravians and the Hauscaraptorine dromaeosaurids in its phylogenetic analyses. The Microraptorians were once again recovered as dromaeosaurids, which also meant that they are no longer the most basal members of Aberraptora. Because of this, the new paper synonymizes Aberraptora with Aviale, giving the definition of the former to the name of the latter. Since the Unenlagiids were always classified as Aberraptorans in their past analyses, that means that this new paper has just made the Unenlagiids, as well as the Hauscaraptorines, now called the Hauscaraptorids in this paper, into birds. This would also mean that Austroraptor would go from being one of the largest dromaeosaurs to being one of the largest birds. I do want to clarify that just because these authors have classified Unenlagiids in this way, this doesn't mean that this is definitely the new consensus from now on. There are still many different phylogenetic matrices that classify Unenlagiids as dromaeosaurids, and new evidence could also lend less credibility to this new hypothesis. Also, from what I can see, the new paper hasn't identified any diagnostic features of traditional avians that were previously unrecognised in the Unenlagiids. The new paper has just identified many new features that Unenlagiids and traditional avians share, and then pushed the boundary of what is considered an avian to what they used to consider Aberraptorans. If more papers come out in support of the non-dromaeosaurid Unenlagiid hypothesis, it is possible that they may reinstate Aberraptora along with non-avian Unenlagiids. On top of this, some paleontologists and many ornithologists suggest that the term bird should only apply to the Neornithians, the clade that only includes all modern birds. If you're already following this idea, then the Unenlagiids being avians probably hasn't changed anything significantly for you. At the end of the day, what is considered a bird and what isn't considered a bird is pretty much subjective, and it warrants its own longer video. Regardless of whether the Unenlagiids are birds, dromaeosaurids, or something in between, the paper also covered some other new points. A new clade was named called Rahenarvinia, which is the clade for all Paravians that are closest to Rahenarvis, and currently only includes Rahenarvis and Oviraptor. The paper also suggests that the Eudromaeosaurian Bambiraptor and the Unenlagiid Buitroraptor may have had the ability to fly. For anyone wondering why I started this series, it's mostly because I frequently ramble on my Discord server about paleontological news as it occurs, so I thought it would probably make more sense if I rambled about it on YouTube instead. This series may not stay in the news station style that I was aiming for in this video, and it might become a more casual sort of video. There might also not be as many topics in the future as were discussed in this video, not only because the amount of actual news stories will vary from week to week, but also because my life is generally getting more busy. Also, as I was finishing the script for this video, a new dinosaur was published, a basal sauropod from the early Jurassic named Huashanosaurus chini. I shall cover it in greater detail in next week's episode. That's it for the news this week. Bye for now.